A very warm welcome, dear friend. To this quiet space we have carved out, a sanctuary from the clamor of the modern world. Here, amidst the gentle stillness, we shall embark on a journey, not through bustling streets or across charted seas, but back through the silent corridors of time itself. Allow your mind to release the day's concerns, to soften its focus, and to drift with my voice. Imagine, if you will, a world veiled in emerald green, a realm where the air is thick with the scent of damp earth and exotic blossoms. Sunlight, heavy and golden, filters through a dense canopy, dappling the forest floor in a shifting mosaic of light and shadow. The symphony of the jungle, the distant call of a howler monkey, the iridescent hum of a hummingbird, the rustle of unseen creatures in the undergrowth is the only music. It is here, in this seemingly impenetrable wilderness, that our story begins. We are traveling to the heartlands of Mesoamerica to uncover the architectural saga of civilizations that rose and fell like the cycles of the sun they so revered. This is Blood and Stone, the brutal secrets of ancient Maya and Aztec pyramid builders. A journey into an age where stone was not merely for shelter, but a sacred language used to speak to the cosmos. Jungle giants, the Maya's rise and early city-states. Our journey commences deep within the Petén Basin of what is now northern Guatemala. For centuries, this landscape of dense, sprawling jungle held its secrets close. It was a world dominated by colossal ceiba trees, their branches reaching like gnarled fingers towards the heavens, creating a world beneath a world, a place of perpetual twilight. It was in this formidable environment, during what scholars call the pre-classic period, around 2000 BCE, that the story of the Maya began to be written in wood, thatch, and eventually in stone. The earliest Maya were village dwellers, agriculturalists who mastered the cultivation of maize, beans, and squash, the sacred trilogy of sustenance that would fuel the rise of their extraordinary civilization. Their initial structures were humble, likely wooden-framed huts with palm-thatched roofs, organic forms that blended seamlessly with the surrounding forest, leaving scant traces for the archaeologists of millennia to come. Yet even in these nascent communities, the seeds of monumental ambition were being sown. They gathered in small, open plazas, spaces designated for communal activities, for the sharing of stories, and for the earliest rituals that sought to understand and appease the powerful, often terrifying, forces of nature that governed their existence. As the centuries unfolded, these villages evolved. A social order began to emerge, with lineages of leaders, shamans, and skilled artisans gaining prominence. With this growing complexity came the desire, and indeed the necessity, for structures that reflected and reinforced this new hierarchy. The simple earthen mounds that may have once elevated a chieftain's home or a sacred shrine began to grow, layer by layer, generation by generation. This was the dawn of Maya monumental architecture. It was not born from a single blueprint or a grand design, but through a slow, organic process of accretion. A ruler would commemorate a significant event, a victory in a local skirmish, a successful harvest, the end of a calendrical cycle, by adding a new layer of earth and rubble to an existing platform. This platform would then be faced with rough-hewn stones, and eventually coated in a thick layer of plaster made from burnt and slaked limestone, a substance that was abundant in the region. This plaster, once dry, formed a smooth, white surface that could be painted with vivid symbols and iconography, a stark and brilliant canvas against the deep green of the jungle. It is here, in this transition, that we find one of the fundamental principles of early Maya architecture: the sacred mountain, or Wits. The pyramids that would come to define their civilization were not merely impressive structures. They were man-made effigies of the sacred, living mountains that dotted their cosmological landscape. They were conceived as conduits, points of connection between the terrestrial realm of humanity, the celestial realm of the gods, and the dark, watery underworld of Xibalba. To build a pyramid was to create a focal point for spiritual energy, a stage upon which the divine drama could be enacted by the king, who served as the supreme intermediary. Let us drift now to the city that perhaps best exemplifies this early flowering of Maya genius: Tikal. At its zenith, during the Classic period from roughly 250 to 900 CE, Tikal was a sprawling metropolis, a powerhouse that dominated the political and economic landscape of the southern Maya lowlands. To approach Tikal in its heyday would have been an awe-inspiring experience. After traveling for days through the dense, disorienting jungle, one would suddenly emerge into a vast, cleared space, a landscape reshaped by human hands. The first things to greet you would not be the pyramids themselves, but the immense causeways, the sakbib or white roads that connected the major ceremonial precincts. These raised limestone roads, sometimes stretching for kilometers, were engineering marvels in their own right, cutting straight lines through the undulating terrain. They were arteries of communication, trade, and ritual procession, paved with white plaster that would have glowed eerily under the moonlight. Following one of these causeways would lead you into the heart of the city, the Great Plaza. Here, the full, staggering scale of Tikal's ambition becomes manifest. The plaza is a vast, open space, meticulously leveled and paved, flanked by two of the most iconic pyramids in the entire Maya world, known to us today as Temple I and Temple II. Imagine standing in the center of this plaza. The air, once thick with the jungle's humidity, now feels different, charged with a palpable sense of power and history. Before you, Temple I, the temple of the Great Jaguar, soars towards the sky. It rises in 9 distinct, stepped terraces, a number deeply significant in Maya cosmology, representing the 9 levels of the underworld. The pyramid's profile is steep, almost impossibly so, creating a powerful sense of verticality that draws the eye ever upward. The stone blocks, quarried from the surrounding land, are fitted together with precision, their surfaces once covered in that smooth, protective layer of plaster. At the very summit, over 47 meters high, rests a small temple shrine, crowned by an enormous, intricately carved roof cone. This towering decorative structure, a hallmark of Tikal's architectural style, would have been a blaze of color, adorned with massive stucco sculptures of the ruler Jasa Chan Ka Will I, seated in glory and surrounded by the iconography of his divine power. The roof comb acted as a kind of monumental billboard, proclaiming the king's might and his sacred connection to the gods for all to see across the city. Directly opposite, Temple II, the Temple of the Masks, stands in respectful symmetry. Though slightly smaller, it is no less impressive. Its broader staircase invites a more direct engagement, and its own roof cone once bore similar grand depictions. These two pyramids create a powerful architectural dialogue across the plaza, a space framed for ceremony. Here, beneath the watchful gaze of these man-made mountains, the citizens of Tikal would have gathered to witness the elaborate rituals performed by their divine king. The plaza floor itself is dotted with stelae and altars, large, upright slabs of stone and their corresponding circular blocks. These are the history books of the Maya. Their surfaces are covered in a complex tapestry of hieroglyphic script and carved portraits of rulers in full ceremonial regalia. They record dynastic lineages, military victories, royal marriages, and the precise dates of celestial events, anchoring the ephemeral lives of men to the eternal cycles of the cosmos. To trace the lines of these carvings with your fingers would be to feel the very pulse of Maya history. The construction of such monuments, without the aid of metal tools, the wheel, or beasts of burden, is a testament to incredible ingenuity and an immense mobilization of labor. The limestone was quarried using harder stone tools like chert and flint. Massive blocks were broken down and shaped, then transported, likely using a combination of manpower, log rollers, and rope. The mortar and plaster that held everything together and gave the buildings their finished form was a product of a vast industry. Countless trees would have been felled to fuel the lime kilns, where limestone was heated to extreme temperatures to create the quicklime that, when mixed with water and aggregate, formed the plaster and mortar. It was a process that demanded immense resources and a highly organized workforce, all directed by the will of the ruler and the knowledge of his architects and engineers. Now, let us allow our journey to drift west, through the jungle, to the foothills of the Chiapas highlands in modern-day Mexico, to a city of exquisite beauty and refinement, Palenque, where Tikal is defined by its sheer scale and towering verticality. Palenque is a city of elegance, grace, and an unparalleled artistic sensitivity. Nestled amidst lush hills and coursing streams, Palenque's architecture feels more intimately connected to its natural surroundings. Its builders integrated the topography into their designs, creating a harmonious blend of nature and artifice. The heart of Palenque is the palace, a sprawling complex of interconnected courtyards, galleries, and residential chambers that grew over several generations. It is not a single monolithic structure, but an architectural accretion that reflects the changing needs and tastes of the city's rulers. As you wander through its labyrinthine corridors, you are struck by the quality of the light. The architects of Palenque were masters of creating interior spaces. They perfected a key innovation known as the corbelled arch or corbelled vault. Unlike a true arch with a keystone, the corbelled arch is formed by progressively overlapping layers of masonry from two sides until they meet at the top, capped by a single flat stone. While this technique cannot span the same wide spaces as a true arch, it allowed the Maya to create narrow, high-ceilinged galleries and rooms, moving beyond the simple post and lintel systems of earlier times. These vaulted spaces, cool and echoing, would have offered a welcome respite from the jungle heat. The walls within the palace are covered in some of the most delicate and finely executed stucco reliefs and stone carvings in the entire ancient Americas. They depict scenes of royal life, of ritual bloodletting, of accession to the throne, and of interactions with supernatural beings. The figures are rendered with a naturalism and grace that feels startlingly alive, their faces imbued with personality and emotion. The stucco, made from the same limestone plaster, was modeled by master artists when wet, allowing for a fluidity of form that is simply breathtaking. Adjacent to the palace stands Palenque's most famous structure, a temple of the inscriptions. From the outside, it appears as a classic Maya pyramid, rising in 8-step levels to a temple at its summit. Its name derives from the 3 large stone panels within the temple, which bear one of the longest hieroglyphic texts ever discovered from the Maya civilization, detailing the history of the city and the dynasty of its greatest king. Tenochtitlan Pacal, or Pacal the Great. For many years, it was believed that Maya pyramids were simply solid ceremonial platforms, unlike their Egyptian counterparts, which served as tombs. The Temple of the Inscriptions held a profound secret. In 1952, the archaeologist Alberto Ruiz Lullier noticed a series of small holes in a flagstone on the temple floor. Lifting it, he discovered a hidden staircase, intentionally filled with rubble, leading down into the dark heart of the pyramid. For 4 long years, his team painstakingly cleared the passageway. It descended deep into the structure, finally ending at a large, beautifully carved stone slab. Beyond it lay a vaulted crypt, a chamber that had been sealed for over 1,000 years. Inside, the air was still and ancient. The walls were adorned with stucco reliefs of the 9 Bolan Tikal, the Lords of the Night. In the center of the chamber lay a magnificent sarcophagus. Its lid, a single slab of stone weighing 5 tons, was covered in one of the most complex and debated carvings in Maya art. It depicts Pacal at the moment of his death, poised between the earthly and supernatural realms, falling into the jaws of the underworld monster, yet simultaneously being reborn, ascending the world tree towards the heavens. When the sarcophagus was finally opened, it revealed the king's mortal remains, adorned with a spectacular death mask made of jade, a stone more precious than gold to the Maya, symbolizing breath, life, and eternity. This discovery revolutionized the understanding of Maya pyramids. They were not just temples, but funerary monuments, sacred mountains that housed the divine essence of the ruler, ensuring his eternal journey and the continued prosperity of his city. The architectural achievements of Tikal and Palenque represent 2 brilliant facets of the Maya spirit. 1, a testament to raw power and cosmic ambition. The other, a celebration of artistic refinement and a deep narrative connection to the dynastic line. Both cities, however, shared a common architectural vocabulary: the pyramid temple, the ceremonial plaza, the corbelled vault, the use of stucco and intricate carvings that defined the golden age of the southern lowlands. These jungle giants, these silent stone witnesses, are the opening chapter in our story, a prelude to even more complex integrations of cosmos and structure that were yet to come. They stand as a powerful reminder of a civilization that, in the heart of one of the world's most challenging environments, raised cities of breathtaking scale and sublime beauty, forever encoding their stories and their beliefs into the very fabric of the landscape. Cosmic calendars, astronomy, ritual, and pyramid design. We leave now the deep southern jungles, with their towering roof combs and shaded palaces, and let our journey drift northward onto the vast, flat expanse of the Yucatan Peninsula. This is a different land, a landscape of scrubby forest, hidden sinkholes known as cenotes, and a sky that feels immense and ever-present. Here, under this brilliant open sky, the architectural focus of the Maya shifted, or rather, sharpened. While the rulers of Tikal and Palenque celebrated their lineage and divine right in stone, the later Maya of the north, particularly at the magnificent city of Chichen Itza, created structures that were nothing less than monumental stone calendars, cosmic clocks designed to map the heavens and sanctify the passage of time itself. For the Maya, time was not the linear, abstract concept we know today. It was a cyclical living entity, a divine force with its own personality, its own burdens, and its own sacred duties. The universe was an endless, repeating pattern of cosmic cycles, and survival depended on understanding these rhythms and honoring them through precise ritual. At the heart of their temporal understanding were two interwoven calendars. The first was the Stucco, a 260-day sacred calendar, likely based on the 9-month cycle of human gestation and the agricultural cycles of the highlands. It was composed of 20-day names paired with 13 numbers, each combination creating a unique day with its own specific portents and divine patrons. This was the calendar of destiny, used for divination and for scheduling sacred events. Working in parallel was the Hab, a 365-day solar calendar that more closely mirrored the agricultural year. It consisted of 18 months of 20 days each, with a final liminal period of 5 unlucky days known as the Web. These two calendars ran concurrently, like two interlocking gears. The point at which they would complete a full cycle and return to the same starting combination of Tucan and Hab dates occurred once every 52 years. This 52-year period, known as the calendar round, was a deeply significant span of time, a century to the Maya, and its conclusion was marked by great ceremony and trepidation, a time of cosmic renewal and potential chaos. To build in alignment with these cycles was not just a matter of aesthetics. It was a way to anchor human society within the sacred order of the universe, to ensure the continued rising of the sun, the coming of the rains, and the sprouting of the maize. Nowhere is this architectural philosophy more breathtakingly realized than at Chichen Itza, a city that flourished in the terminal classic and early post-classic periods. From around 800 to 1200 CE, at the center of this sprawling cosmopolitan city, a hub of trade and ideas that saw influence from the Toltecs of central Mexico, stands a structure that is the ultimate embodiment of time carved in stone. The pyramid known as El Castillo, the Temple of Kukulkan. From a distance, it appears as a perfectly symmetrical four-sided pyramid, a model of geometric purity. But as you draw closer, you realize that every single element of its design is a deliberate, numerological representation of the Maya calendars. Let us approach from the north, its primary orientation. A grand staircase rises before you, flanked by the undulating bodies of enormous stone serpents, their fierce, feathered heads resting on the ground at the base. This is Kukulkan, the feathered serpent, a powerful creator deity associated with the sun, the wind, and knowledge itself. The pyramid rises in 9 distinct terraces. Count them. 9, the number of levels in the dark underworld Xibalba. Each of the 4 stairways contains 91 steps. If you multiply 91 by the 4 sides, you arrive at 364 steps. Add the single top platform, the temple that crowns the pyramid, and you have a total of 365, the precise number of days in the solar Hab calendar. The pyramid is, quite literally, a 3-dimensional model of the year. Furthermore, the panels that adorn the sides of the 9 terraces number 52, representing the 52-year cycle of the calendar round. This structure is not merely a building about the calendar. It is the calendar. But its true genius, its most magical secret, is only revealed twice a year on the spring and autumn equinoxes. On these 2 days, when day and night are of equal length, a remarkable phenomenon of light and shadow occurs. As the late afternoon sun sinks towards the western horizon, its rays strike the northwestern corner of the pyramid's terraces. The angled light casts a series of triangular shadows that creep slowly down the northern balustrade. These triangles connect, one by one, with the stone serpent head at the pyramid's base, creating the illusion of a colossal, luminous serpent slithering its way down from the temple in the sky to the earth below. This is Kukulkan, descending to the mortal realm. Thousands would have gathered in the plaza to witness this celestial event. It was a divine confirmation of the changing seasons, a signal that the time for planting the corn was approaching in the spring, or that the harvest was to begin in the fall. It was a piece of architectural theater on a cosmic scale, a breathtaking demonstration of the power of the ruler and his astronomer priests, who alone possessed the sacred knowledge to command the sun and summon the gods. This was not a happy accident of construction. It was the result of centuries of patient observation and an astonishingly sophisticated understanding of astronomy and mathematics, all brought to life through the precise angling of stone. Let us explore another of Chichen Itza's architectural wonders, a structure whose purpose is even more explicitly astronomical. A short walk from El Castillo lies a peculiar building, one that breaks from the right-angled tradition of Maya architecture. It is a circular tower resting on a series of square platforms, known today as El Caracol, Spanish for the snail, due to the spiral staircase that winds its way up through the tower's core. This was Chichen Itza's observatory. Its weathered, domed roof has partially collapsed, but the remaining window and door openings reveal its secrets. These are not randomly placed apertures. They are carefully aligned to track the movements of celestial bodies with incredible precision. One alignment marks the northernmost and southernmost positions of Venus on the horizon. Another series of windows aligns with the position of the sun at the equinoxes and solstices. Venus, in particular, held a place of paramount importance in Maya cosmology. They were not just casual stargazers. They were obsessive astronomers who charted the planet's synodic period, its 584-day cycle as the morning and evening star, with an accuracy that modern science, until the advent of the telescope, could not surpass. To the Maya, Venus was not a benign goddess of love, but the celestial manifestation of a fearsome and warlike deity. Its heliacal rising, the day it first reappeared in the sky after being hidden by the sun's glare, was considered a moment of immense power and danger, an auspicious time to launch military campaigns and conduct important rituals. The Dresden Codex, one of the few surviving Maya books, contains elaborate tables that are, in essence, ephemerides of Venus, almanacs for war. The priests would ascend the winding staircase of El Caracol, emerging into the small chamber at the top. Peering through the narrow viewing shafts, they would mark the precise moment these celestial events occurred, interpreting them for the ruler and the populace. The observatory was a weapon of knowledge, a tool that allowed the elite to predict the future and to schedule their most critical actions in harmony with the cosmos. These buildings were not static monuments. They were dynamic stages for ritual, their significance activated by human performance. The plaza before El Castillo was designed for acoustics. A person clapping their hands at a specific point in front of the pyramid will hear an echo that uncannily resembles the chirping call of the sacred Quetzal bird, a creature closely associated with Kukulkan. Was this intentional? It is hard to imagine it was not. It adds another sensory layer to the ritual experience, the sound of the sacred bird seemingly answering the invocations of the people below. The great causeways, the sakbib, that connect the main ceremonial groups at Chichen Itza would have been the routes for solemn processions. Imagine the ruler, adorned in jaguar pelts and a magnificent headdress of quetzal feathers, leading a procession of priests and nobles along these white roads, the smoke of copal incense filling the air. They would move from the observatory, where the celestial moment had been confirmed, to the great ball court for a ritual game, or to the platform of the skulls, the Sompantli, where the heads of sacrificial victims were displayed, and finally to the Great Pyramid itself, to complete the ceremony that would appease the gods and reset the cosmic clock. The architecture was the script, the calendar was the schedule, and the rituals were the performance that brought the entire cosmic drama to life. The design of these spaces, the width of the plazas, the height of the pyramids, the astronomical alignments, was all orchestrated to create a powerful, immersive experience that reinforced the social order and the state religion. The knowledge of the cosmos was power, and that power was made manifest in stone. The pyramids and observatories were not just beautiful. They were instruments of control, demonstrating to all that the rulers of the city were the true masters of time, the keepers of the sacred cycles, and the sole intermediaries between the heavens and the earth. Their architectural legacy is one of a universe understood and reflected, a world where every stone was imbued with purpose, and every building was a chapter in the endless story of the stars. It is a testament to an intellectual and spiritual endeavor of the highest order, where science and religion were not opposing forces, but two sides of the same celestial coin. The island city, Tenochtitlan and Aztec urbanism. Our journey now takes a great leap, both in geography and in time. We leave the sun-drenched plains of the Yucatan and ascend, rising high into the crisp, thin air of the central Mexican plateau. Here, cradled by a dramatic ring of snow-capped volcanoes, lay a series of vast, shimmering lakes. It was in this basin, the Valley of Mexico, that the final great Mesoamerican civilization would construct a city that was, in its time, one of the largest and most magnificent on Earth. This is the story of the Mexica, better known to history as the Aztecs and their astonishing capital, Tenochtitlan, a metropolis built against all odds upon the water. Their story, as they told it, was one of a long pilgrimage. They were a nomadic people who had journeyed for generations from a mythical northern homeland called Aztlan, guided by the insistent prophecy of their patron deity, the fierce sun and war god Huitzilopochtli. He had promised them a new home, and they would know it by a sign: an eagle perched upon a noble cactus, devouring a serpent. After decades of wandering and persecution by the established powers of the valley, the Mexica scouts finally beheld the prophesied sign. But it was not in a lush valley or a defensible highland. It was on a small, swampy, unremarkable island near the western shore of the vast Lake Texcoco. It was a challenging, almost impossible location, marshy, lacking in building materials, and with no source of fresh water. Yet for the Mexica, the divine sign was absolute. This was their destined home, and with a resilience and ingenuity that would come to define them, they set about transforming this unpromising mudflat into a wonder of the world. What they created was not merely a city, but a monumental work of hydraulic engineering, a testament to the human ability to not just adapt to an environment, but to fundamentally reshape it to serve a grand vision. The first and most pressing problem was land. The island itself was far too small to support a growing population and the agricultural needs of a future empire. The solution the Mexica devised was one of the most brilliant and sustainable agricultural innovations in human history: the chinampa. These are often called floating gardens, but the reality is more ingenious. They were artificial islands, built by weaving immense, rectangular enclosures from reeds and wattle, which were then anchored to the shallow lakebed. Into these woven frames, the Mexica would dredge the rich mud and decaying organic matter from the bottom of the lake, layering it until it rose above the water level. They would then plant fast-growing willow trees along the edges, whose dense roots would further stabilize the new landmass. Imagine the city in its prime. It was not a city of streets in the way we understand them, but a vast and intricate network of canals and waterways. Instead of carts, canoes glided silently through these channels, carrying goods and people. Flanking these canals were the chinampas, stunningly verdant and productive plots of land. Because their bases were constantly saturated with water from the lake, and the soil was a nutrient-rich slurry, these gardens were incredibly fertile. They could yield up to 7 different crops a year, providing a constant and abundant source of maize, beans, squash, tomatoes, chilies, and flowers. Tenochtitlan was a city that grew its own food from the water, an urban agricultural landscape where the lines between city and countryside were beautifully blurred. The entire city, seen from the slopes of the surrounding volcanoes, would have appeared as an immaculate grid of green gardens and shimmering canals, punctuated by the stone towers of its temples. It was an ecosystem, a metropolis engineered to be in perfect symbiosis with its lacustrine environment. To connect their island home to the mainland, the Mexica built 3 enormous causeways, running north, south, and west. These were not simple earthen dikes. They were massive feats of engineering, wide enough for 10 horsemen to ride abreast, stretching for miles across the lake. To build them, workers drove thousands of wooden piles deep into the soft lake bed to create a stable foundation, then filled the space between them with earth and stone. These causeways were the arteries of the empire, allowing for the easy movement of armies, tribute bearers, and traders. They were also cleverly designed for defense. At intervals along their length were removable wooden bridges. In times of war, these bridges could be pulled away, transforming the city into an almost impregnable island fortress, isolated and protected by the surrounding water. Yet for all the water that surrounded them, the lake itself was brackish and not suitable for drinking. The Mexica solved this critical problem with another marvel of engineering, the aqueduct. The most famous of these was the Chapultepec Aqueduct, which ran from a spring on the mainland for over 3 miles to the heart of the city. What was truly remarkable was its design. It was not a single channel, but a twin-pipe system. 2 parallel conduits, made from stone and terracotta, ran side by side. This meant that when one channel needed to be closed for cleaning or repairs, the other could continue to supply the city with an uninterrupted flow of fresh, clean water. This water was then distributed throughout the city to public fountains and reservoirs, a vital lifeline for a population that would swell to over 200,000 people. At the very heart of this meticulously planned city, where the main causeways converged, lay the ceremonial and spiritual core of the Aztec universe, the sacred precinct. This was a vast, walled enclosure, a city within a city, containing dozens of temples, palaces, schools for priests, and a court for the ritual ball game. It was a space of profound sanctity and terrifying power, and dominating it all was the ultimate expression of Aztec architectural and religious belief, the Templo Mayor, the Great Temple. The Templo Mayor was the Aztec Axis Mundi, their cosmic center. It was a massive stepped pyramid, but with a unique feature that set it apart from its Maya predecessors. Its summit was crowned not by one temple, but by 2 standing side by side. This dual structure was a physical manifestation of the most fundamental duality in the Aztec worldview. One shrine, painted a vibrant blue and white, was dedicated to Tlaloc, the ancient god of rain, water, and agricultural fertility. The other, painted a stark and menacing red and white, was dedicated to the Mexica's own patron, Huitzilopochtli, the god of the sun and of war. The Templo Mayor was, therefore, a symbolic mountain that brought together the two essential forces that sustained the empire: water and war, agriculture and tribute. To ascend its steps was to journey towards the heavens where these two divine powers resided. The pyramid itself was seen as a sacred mountain of sustenance, a replica of the mythic Coatepec, or Serpent Mountain, where Huitzilopochtli was said to have been born and to have slain his siblings. Its construction was a continuous process of ritual renewal. Each successive Aztec ruler, upon his coronation, would build a new, larger temple directly over the one built by his predecessor. The old temple was not destroyed, but carefully encased within the new, larger structure. Over 7 major phases of construction, the Templo Mayor grew in size and sacredness, each layer a testament to the growing power of the empire. This practice has been a gift to modern archaeologists. When the ruins were discovered by electrical workers in the heart of Mexico City in 1978, the excavation of these nested layers was like peeling an onion, revealing a timeline of the empire's history. Buried within each layer were caches of precious offerings, brought from every corner of their vast domain. Jaguar skeletons from the southern jungles, coral and shells from the distant coasts, elaborate obsidian knives, and jade masks from the lands of the Maya. The temple was not just a place of worship, but a symbolic repository for the entire empire. It is impossible to speak of the Templo Mayor without acknowledging its role as the primary stage for human sacrifice. For the Aztecs, this was not an act of wanton cruelty, but the highest and most necessary of sacred duties. According to their cosmology, the gods themselves had sacrificed their own blood to create the world and set the current sun, the fifth sun, in motion, to keep the sun from dying and plunging the world into eternal darkness. This divine debt had to be repaid with the most precious substance imaginable, human life and blood, which they called chalquihuitl, or precious water. The steep twin staircases of the Templo Mayor were the setting for these grim, theatrical rituals. Captives of war would be led up the steps to the summit, where priests would perform the sacrifice, ensuring that the sun would rise again the next day and the rains would fall to nourish the crops. The architecture was designed for this purpose, to elevate the ritual, to make it visible to the crowds in the plaza below, and to reinforce the awesome power of the gods and the emperor who served them. Tenochtitlan was a city of stunning contrasts. The serene green geometry of the chinampas and the silent glide of canoes existed alongside the monumental, blood-soaked theater of the sacred precinct. The quiet domesticity of residential compounds stood in the shadow of palaces and temples, built to project imperial power across hundreds of miles. It was a city that floated on a lake, fed by man-made islands, connected by great causeways, and sustained by an unshakable belief in the cosmic order. It remains one of history's greatest examples of urban planning, a testament to a people who saw a divine prophecy in a hostile swamp and engineered not just a city, but a universe in its place. Beyond the pyramids, ball courts, palaces, and everyday life. In our journey thus far, our gaze has been drawn upward, following the steep stairways of the Great Pyramids to the celestial realms they sought to touch. We have stood in the heart of sacred precincts where time was measured and gods were appeased. But the lives of the Maya and the Aztecs, like any great civilization, or not lived solely at the foot of their temples. To truly understand their world, we must now lower our gaze from the heavens and turn our attention to the spaces that lay between and beyond the pyramids, the vibrant arenas of sport and politics, the sprawling complexes of governance, and the quiet courtyards of domestic life. For it is here, in the architecture of the everyday, the ceremonial, and the administrative, that we can begin to hear the subtler rhythms of these ancient societies. Let us first drift into one of the most distinctive and enigmatic architectural forms in Mesoamerica, the ball court. Nearly every city of consequence, from the humid lowlands of the Maya to the highland capital of the Aztecs, had at least one, and often several. These were not simply fields for sport. They were deeply symbolic spaces, architectural arenas where cosmology, politics, and ritual drama were played out in a game of profound and often deadly significance. The typical ball court was an eye-shaped space, a long, narrow alley flanked by two parallel structures with sloping or, in later periods, vertical walls. The game itself, known to the Aztecs as Olamalizli, was played with a solid, heavy rubber ball, a substance unknown in Europe at the time. Players, adorned in protective gear, could not use their hands or feet, but instead had to strike the dense ball with their hips, thighs, and sometimes their forearms or knees. The objective was to keep the ball in motion, bouncing it off the side walls, and in some versions of the game, to achieve the near impossible feat of propelling it through one of the two small, vertical stone rings that were often set high on the walls of the court. Imagine standing in the great ball court at Chichen Itza, the largest in all of ancient America. It is a space of intimidating scale. The parallel walls are immense, stretching nearly 170 meters, long and standing 8 meters high. The acoustics of the space are astonishing. A whisper from one end of the court can be heard clearly at the other. This was a space designed for spectacle, to accommodate large crowds who would watch from atop the walls. But what they were watching was far more than a game. The court itself was a potent symbol, often interpreted as a liminal space, a representation of the underworld, Xibalba. The movement of the ball was a reenactment of cosmic struggles, the passage of the sun and moon through the sky, or the eternal battle between light and darkness. The game was used for divination, to settle disputes between rival cities, and as a proxy for warfare. It was a political theater where alliances could be forged and fates decided. And it was a theater that often ended in sacrifice. Carved into the base of the walls at Chichen Itza are chillingly detailed relief panels. They depict the two teams of players, richly attired. But the central panel shows the grim conclusion. A victorious player stands, holding the severed head of a player from the opposing team. From the neck of the decapitated victim, 7 streams of blood erupt, 6 transforming into serpents, and 1 into a flowering vine, symbolizing life and regeneration born from death. This graphic depiction underscores the ultimate sacredness of the game. The blood spilt upon the court was believed to nourish the earth and appease the gods, just as the blood spilt atop the pyramids sustained the sun. To play the game was to participate in the sacred maintenance of the cosmos, and for some, to offer their own life as the ultimate prize. From the intense public drama of the ball court, let us now move to the more private, yet equally powerful realm of the palace. If the pyramids were the spiritual hearts of Mesoamerican cities, the palaces were their political and administrative brains. These were not single buildings, but sprawling, multifunctional complexes that grew organically over generations, reflecting the expanding power and complexity of the ruling dynasty. Here, the architecture shifts from the soaring verticality of the temples to a more grounded, horizontal expanse. These were the centers of governance, where the daily business of the state was conducted. Let us wander again through the cool, labyrinthine corridors of the palace at Palenque. Its layout is a masterpiece of spatial organization, a series of courtyards, galleries, and rooms, each with a distinct function. Open, sunlit courtyards would have served as reception areas, where the king via jaw would receive tribute and emissaries from vassal states. Attendants and nobles would have bustled through these spaces, their brightly colored cotton garments a vivid contrast to the pale limestone walls. Deeper within the complex were the throne rooms, intimate spaces where the king would sit in judgment, surrounded by exquisitely carved panels depicting his divine ancestors, their presence reinforcing his legitimacy. One of the most famous features of the Palenque Palace is its unique four-story tower. This structure likely served as both a watchtower, offering a commanding view of the surrounding city and farmlands, and as an astronomical observatory, a private counterpart to the more public observatories like El Caracol, where the king's own priests could track the heavens and determine auspicious dates for statcraft. The palace was also a hive of artistic production. Within its walls were workshops where skilled artisan scribes, ceramicists, sculptors, and featherworkers produced the luxury goods that were the currency of elite power and diplomacy. It was a self-contained world, a place of royal ritual, intricate bureaucracy, and dynastic living. Similarly, the palaces of the Aztec emperors, or Tlatoani, in Tenochtitlan were legendary for their opulence, though they are now known to us primarily through the vivid, and perhaps exaggerated, accounts of the Spanish conquistadors who witnessed them. They described vast complexes with hundreds of rooms, great open courtyards, and fragrant gardens. The palace of Moctezuma II was said to contain not just living quarters and audience chambers, but also a state armory, tribute storehouses, and even a vast aviary and zoo, housing creatures from every corner of his empire. These palaces were the ultimate symbols of imperial power, designed to awe and intimidate all who entered. They were the nodes from which the emperor's will radiated outward, controlling the lives of millions. But what of the vast majority of the population? What of the farmers, the artisans, and the laborers who built these grand monuments? Their lives, too, were shaped by architecture, albeit on a much humbler scale. Let us drift now to the periphery of the great ceremonial centers, to the residential wards where the common people lived. Here, the enduring stone and plaster give way to more perishable materials. The basic unit of both Maya and Aztec society was the extended family, and their homes reflected this communal structure. A typical residential compound consisted of several simple buildings arranged around a shared central patio. The houses themselves were often built on low stone foundations, with walls made of wattle and daub or wooden poles, and topped with a high, steeply pitched roof of palm thatch that was remarkably effective at shedding the heavy tropical rains. Imagine the life that unfolded in this central courtyard. This open-air space was the true heart of the home. Here, under a shady ramada, women would grind maize on a stone metate, the rhythmic sound a constant backdrop to daily life. They would weave intricate textiles on backstrap looms tied to a post, their fingers moving with practiced grace. Men would return from the fields or workshops, storing their tools and sharing news. It was in this courtyard that meals were cooked, children played, and family rituals were conducted at a small household altar. It was a space that was at once intensely private and deeply communal. These compounds, clustered together, formed neighborhoods, the Calpulli of the Aztecs, creating a close-knit social fabric. While their homes have long since weathered away, leaving only foundation stones and pottery shards for archaeologists to find, they are as essential to our story as the grandest pyramid. They reveal a world of quiet domesticity, of familial bonds, and of the daily work that formed the true foundation of these magnificent civilizations. The city was not just a collection of temples, but a tapestry woven from thousands of these small, vital domestic threads. From the Bal Court's sacred violence, to the palace's political machinations, to the family's gentle rhythms, the architecture of Mesoamerica reveals a society of incredible complexity, a world where every structure, large or small, had its place in the grand cosmic and social order. Stone Stories, the legacy of Mesoamerican architecture. Our journey through time and stone now draws to its gentle conclusion. We have walked the white causeways of Tikal, stood in the shadow of its jungle giants, and felt the humid air of its plazas. We have traced the celestial serpent down the flanks of El Castillo, a pyramid that breathes with the rhythm of the cosmos. We have navigated the canals of an island metropolis and ascended the twin stairways to the symbolic heart of the Aztec universe. We have listened for the shouts of the ball game and the quiet hum of life in the courtyards of the common folk. Now, as our path comes to an end, we pause and look back, not at a single city or one monument, but at the enduring echo of these civilizations, at the stories their stones continue to tell, and at the profound legacy they left upon the world. What, then, is the unique and lasting contribution of Mesoamerican architecture to the grand tapestry of human creation? It is not merely a question of form or technique, but of intention. The great builders of the old world, the Egyptians, the Greeks, the Romans raised their monuments for reasons we can readily understand. To immortalize a pharaoh, to house a pantheon of gods in perfect proportion, to project the civic and military power of an empire. Their architecture, for all its beauty and grandeur, was largely a stage for human affairs, or a tomb for human remains. The legacy of the Maya and the Aztecs is something different. Theirs was an architecture conceived not just as a stage, but as an active participant in the workings of the universe. Their pyramids were not inert masses of stone. They were instruments designed to track, to channel, and to influence cosmic forces. They were engines of time, tools for celestial alignment, and conduits for the sacred energies that they believed sustained the world. This is their first and most profound legacy, the creation of a truly cosmic architecture, where buildings were not just places in the world, but functional parts of the world's cyclical, living machinery. This philosophy is inseparable from their second great legacy, a deep and sophisticated integration with the natural landscape. In Mesoamerica, architecture was not an imposition upon the environment, but a conversation with it. The Maya did not level mountains to build their cities. They built their own sacred mountains, the Huiz, in their place, transforming the flatlands into a sacred geography of their own making. The soaring temples of Tikal were designed to pierce the jungle canopy, to commune with the sky while remaining rooted in the earth, their forms echoing the great ceiba trees that surrounded them. Palenque's builders did not fight the undulating terrain of the Chiapas foothills. They embraced it, letting their palaces and temples cascade down the slopes, integrating streams and springs into the very fabric of their city. And most spectacularly, The Aztecs did not see a swamp as an obstacle, but as an opportunity. They wove their city into the waters of Lake Texcoco, creating the chinampas, a system of urban agriculture so perfectly attuned to its environment that it stands today as a model of sustainable design. Their legacy is one of working with nature, not against it, of seeing the landscape not as a resource to be exploited, but as a divine text to be read, interpreted, and honored in stone. This was all achieved with a stunning ingenuity born of necessity. Without metal tools for quarrying and carving, without the wheel for transport, without beasts of burden to haul the massive blocks, these civilizations accomplished feats of construction that rival any in the ancient world. Their legacy is one of mastery over their materials. They understood limestone with an intimacy that allowed them to quarry it, shape it, and burn it to create the plaster and stucco that gave their buildings their smooth, brilliant finish and provided the canvas for their intricate art. They organized human labor on a scale that is difficult to comprehend, moving millions of tons of rubble and stone with nothing more than raw manpower, rollers and rope, all orchestrated by a shared belief and a powerful central authority. Their development of the corbelled arch, while not a true arch, was a clever solution that allowed them to create the cool, vaulted interior spaces that are a hallmark of their palaces and temples. Their legacy is a powerful testament to the idea that technological limitations cannot constrain human ambition and creativity. Perhaps the most precious legacy, however, is the knowledge that these stones have preserved for us. The ruins of these great cities are our most direct connection to their lost worlds. They are libraries written in stone and plaster. When we gaze upon the stelae at Tikal or Capon, we are reading the dynastic histories of kings, their births, their triumphs in battle, their marriages, and their deaths, all anchored to precise dates in their intricate calendar. The Temple of the Inscriptions at Palenque gave us one of the longest coherent texts from the ancient Americas, a narrative of a city and its most revered king, Tikal. The discovery of his tomb, deep within the pyramid, utterly transformed our understanding, revealing that these structures were not just temple platforms, but also funerary monuments, akin in purpose, if not in form, to the pyramids of Egypt. Every excavated structure adds a new chapter to our understanding. The astronomical alignments in their buildings are not matters of speculation. They are demonstrable facts that reveal a sophisticated, scientific understanding of the cosmos that was interwoven with their religious beliefs. The Templo Mayor, rising in its nested layers from beneath the streets of modern Mexico City, is a vertical timeline of the Aztec Empire, each layer a new reign, each offering cash, a map of their vast tribute network. These stones speak, and it is the patient work of archaeologists that has allowed us to begin to learn their language. Finally, the legacy of Mesoamerican architecture did not end with the arrival of the Spanish. It survives. It survives in the layout of many colonial towns in Mexico and Guatemala, which were built directly upon the foundations of the old cities, often retaining the central plaza as the heart of the community. It survives in the building techniques and materials still used in many rural villages. It survives in the cultural identity of millions of people of Maya and Nahua descent, for whom these ancient sites are not dead ruins, but living places of heritage and ceremony. And it survives as a powerful symbol. The image chosen for the flag of modern Mexico is the very sign that guided the Aztecs to their island home. An eagle on a cactus, devouring a serpent. The prophecy that founded Tenochtitlan is now the emblem of a nation, a direct and enduring link to that pre-Hispanic past. The bold geometric forms, The monumental simplicity and the profound connection to the landscape found in ancient Mesoamerican architecture have also served as a deep well of inspiration for modern architects in Latin America and beyond, providing a language of design that is both universal in its power and unique to the Americas. And so, our story comes to a close. We have journeyed far, from the first earthen mounds rising, from the jungle floor to the sophisticated cosmic clocks of the great city-states. We have seen how stone and water, jungle and sky, were woven together to create some of the most awe-inspiring structures ever conceived. The voices of the kings and priests are silent now. The plazas are empty. The incense smoke has long since cleared, but the stones remain. They stand as silent, patient witnesses to the ingenuity, the devotion, and the profound worldview of the civilizations that raised them. They are a legacy not just of power, but of a deep human need to find order in the cosmos and to build a reflection of that order here on Earth. As you drift now into the quiet of your own rest, perhaps you can still hear the faint echo of their story, a tale of blood and stone, whispered on the wind that blows across the silent, sleeping pyramids. I believe our journey is now complete. We have traversed the jungles and the highlands, explored the pyramids and palaces, and listened to the stories whispered by the ancient stones. May the echoes of this history settle your mind and guide you toward a peaceful and restorative rest. Thank you for joining me on this exploration of blood and stone.